Councillor Handford to do the council blessing.
Morena, ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana e ngā take kei mua i o mātou aro e pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara hua pai mo ngā hapori I mahi nei mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tā mātou mahi, a mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hihiri, ka taia te arahi I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha.
Kia ora, Councillor Handford. So, I don't believe we have any apologies for this meeting. It's the first time we've all been present around the table. It's absolutely wonderful. So great to see such a full table today. Are there any apologies? I'll just double check. No. Any declarations of interest? There's nothing under 5, nothing under 6. So we move to public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. And I have David and Kathleen Campbell. And what's our time limit?
3 minutes.
So you have 3 minutes. So David and Kathleen Campbell, if you'd like to come to the table.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Perhaps the volume could be
Once you sit,
once guests at the back.
Once you sit, are you having trouble hearing me at the back there? Okay, I'll move my microphone a little closer. So you have 3 minutes, and then we'll allow for a few questions afterwards from elected members. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks to those that we've talked to and shown support for our situation. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. I've got a written statement which you'll be probably getting a copy of. You may even have it in front of you. The upper part of Otaki Gorge Road has been blocked off to all vehicle traffic since September 2020. That's the situation. Vehicle access for us to our home and for the wider community's access to the Otaki Forks campground has been lost. A temporary walking track across the overslip has been facilitated by KCDC. Thank you. Most trampers, day trippers and ourselves have used this track rather than the longer and more dangerous emergency track which was facilitated by DOC. Clearly the access issue for us and the wider community, local, national and international, we get quite a few international people coming through, it needs to be addressed and decided upon. Right now, a report by your KCDC officers is before you to enable a decision to be made. Kathleen and I have spent nearly 4 years waiting for KCDC to address the access issue. You're doing it now, great. Now that a full and formal report from your officers is being presented today, please make a binding, definitive decision to open the road. This will not only give us full vehicle access to our home, but also enable all comers access to Otaki Forks and beyond. In preparing their report, your officers have carefully considered expert engineering and technical advice. Please respect this fact. Please follow their advice. Please accept their recommendations. Final plea, our request is quite simple. Please choose option A and open Otaki Gorge Road for vehicle traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before I go to any questions, just an acknowledgement of how hard it's been for you while the road's been closed, and we all feel for you. Any questions? No, there don't appear to be any. Thank you very much for your presentation and coming along today. Deborah Reid. Welcome, Deborah. Just start when you're ready.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name's Deborah Reed. I grew up on the Kapiti Coast and returned 15 years ago like a salmon. And today, I think that the saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, couldn't be more true in the case of the entrance to the Otaki Forks and Tararua Forest Park. Let's not underestimate the value and importance of the forks to Kapiti and the region. As a child, my parents would take their 5 kids up to the Otaki River for picnics and swimming. Just after I retired last June, I pack rafted down the Otaki River from Shields Flat in an inflatable kayak in 5 degrees Celsius water with thermal socks on and a wetsuit. It was freezing, thundering and hailing, but I never felt so alive and in the moment. So I bought a pack raft. I put an order through that night, and it's now a weekly activity for me and for quite a number of others. I joined Hutt Valley Canoe Club, Ruahine Whitewater Club, Parawai Tramping Club, and Federated Mountain Clubs. Staving off old age, you see. The outdoors is truly the key to vitality and well-being at any age and for all. Our awa, our Otaki River, has great significance for us as a community. The river and forest is a source of physical and mental well-being which has been enjoyed by so many over the decades. The people who grew up here, visitors, international visitors. The restorative powers of the park and nature should continue to be accessible for all, young and old, abled or disabled, especially the children who are our future. They need to learn from Mother Nature if they will protect our planet in the future. For decades, our parents' generation has invested in the park. We see roading, bridges, the Ranger's House, the Parawai Lodge, dock campground, formed walks, shelters, signs, maps, toilets. The investment from past generations has been enormous. Thousands and thousands of hectares of national park form the backdrop for this asset. But what's the value? What value can we put on it? Is it 20 million, 30 million, 40 million? Who could say? Can we close the road and mothball the lot? Blue Bluff has slipped in the past where a modicum of vehicle access was attempted. But we now have an opportunity, I believe, and a public mandate to build a more robust vehicle access over Blue Bluff. It will cost, but is throwing away a $30 million asset even an option? Our council, KCDC, must consider our population is rapidly expanding and Kapiti is proudly a growth region. Town planning must build in green spaces in their long-term plans. A huge park like the Forks on our doorstep is a guarantee that we have the facilities for families, school children, overseas tourists, trampers, kayakers. Vehicle access will ensure the maximum number of people benefit, locals and from the wider region and internationally. Kiwis' love of the wilderness is in our DNA. The Otaki Forks and Tararua Forest Park is arguably the largest, most comprehensive asset in the lower North Island. Therefore, the cost to maintain, if it should be supported by not only local council, but by the wider government. Wellington Regional Council, Waka Kotahi, DOC, should all have a part to play in supporting the maintenance of public access to the Forks. So please, councillors, today please vote for reopening vehicle access. Let the Otaki Forks be an incubator for our love of nature from childhood right into retirement. Keep the park open to many, lest it falls into the hands of a privileged few. Ngā mihi, namaste, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was so thoughtful. I let it carry on a little bit longer. Thank you very much. Any questions? They don't appear. Oh, yes.
Cool.
Ken
Kia ora,
Butler.
Deborah. As a fellow Te Ora resident, welcome. Given that you've described your association with the river and the section of the river that is now not available to kayakers and pack rafters without quite some difficulty.
Well, pack rafters, because my boat is 4 kilos, the kayak is about 20 kilos.
Yep. How far do you have to go elsewhere? How long do you have to drive elsewhere to try and find that similar sort of river that you can't quite get access to now?
Oh, good question. To get a grade 2 plus, I would need to go up to Mangaweka to pack raft down the Rangatiki River.
Right, so that's what?
2
3
hours
and about hour?
drive.
Yep.
2 hours drive.
Yep.
For a quick paddle down a 1 kilometre section of the Hutt River through suburbia with sounds of lawnmowers and dogs and children and the things that we want to get away from, that doesn't really cut it.
Yeah. Did you ever get the opportunity to do the sort of nearly grade 3 section from the campgrounds down? Or did you've done from
I've
the
gone
domain
from
down?
the Forks.
From the Forks.
I have.
Okay.
There hasn't been enough water to get down from the campgrounds this summer.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Jackie Elliott. Oh, sorry. If you could angle your microphone up so I can see it, that would be great. Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Hi, Deborah.
Hey.
Thanks for your submission. So there is an option for a swing bridge to be put across, which will be a long-lasting permanent access. So would you object to the swing bridge option?
Yes,
What's
I
your
would.
objection to the swing bridge option?
Yes, I would. I'm not here. Well, I'm here for myself, but also for the wider community, I believe. However, it's not an option for me for a swing bridge because it's still the same length of walk. I can carry a pack raft up to Shields Flat, but it's another 3 kilometres to get right up to the campground. Most of my paddle buddies have hard shell kayaks which weigh 15 to 22 kilos, and very few of them are willing to carry their boat up that far.
Great, thank you. Cheers.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Now we have Jackie Elliott.
Oh no,
Oh, if you could put your microphones on directly after the presenters finish speaking, because it's really hard to pick them up on the fly as people are moving around, that would be appreciated. Thank you. I think we're going to move on to Jackie Elliott. You'll have to take your question offline. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. For those that may not know, I'm Jackie Elliott. I'm a member of the Otaki Community Board and also a lifetime member of Live in Waipehu Tramping Club and a Te Araroa Trail Angel. Meaning I contact many of the people from overseas that travel through the Tararua Ranges on the trail. I'd just like to speak today to take the opportunity to thank all of you elected members, our CE Darren Edwards, Madam Mayor and Deputy Mayor Lawrence Kirby, and those of you who have come along to the opportunities that my fellow community board members and I have made for you to come up into the gorge, to meet the lovely residents, to take a moment to take in the enormity of the bush, the river, the awa, the damage, and the decision ahead of you, and that it's made from a place of being a place of knowledge, and not from just reading a report and looking at numbers. On the report, I would like to especially thank our staff. Thank you so much for all of your ongoing support, your long phone calls and absolute patience for a number of years now in answering all of our questions that have come from a wide range of places, and for coping with the fact that it's been a bit of a changing move the long way through. I am really impressed with the report. Far more pleased with it in the technical report that I ever thought imaginable. I am completely in support of as is my community board, of the road opening, and I look forward to that day, and I'll leave this decision in your hands. But thank you all for those that have come up with us, and to our ward councillor Shelley Warwick who stepped up and kicked off those site visits.
Thank you very much. I've got a question from Councillor Pavanov.
Thank you to the Chair. Thank you, Jackie, for coming along. Nice to see you again.
You too.
And thank you to the previous speakers as well. So, as you've seen, we have a very good detailed report in front of us, and it also deals the number of slips that have occurred on that site for quite a long period of time, and it shows the increased frequency that they're occurring. My question, and quite happy to have just a yes or a no, should this road be kept open if we agree today to do the work, regardless of the cost? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just double checking. Any more questions? Please put your microphones on now if you have a question. Councillor Cooper.
That deliberately. Thanks, Jackie.
Okay.
I've tramped extensively up through there, as have my children. In terms of the access for the trails, the trampers, even picnickers and day people, do you think a swing bridge option and walking track up to the higher reaches of the river would achieve what needs to be achieved, which is leaving the park open, essentially? Just the vehicle access is just brought forward as a sensible option.
Yeah, good question, Glenn. I've read the report, and looking at the figures, I don't think it's a sensible option. And it would definitely be serving the Te Araroa walkers and all those trampers. I mean, they carry their world on their back, and they can walk across anything. And I'm sure they've already been through what's far more challenging terrain in the ranges. But for everyone that wants to go to those 150 campgrounds, and especially those that want to take their families with them, you're talking luggage and trailers and tents and food supplies and that sort of thing. They can't take that sort of equipment through on their backs. So I would definitely still recommend that the road open for all of them. And just remembering 150 campsites is 85% of all of the tent sites and campsites available on the Kapiti Coast. A cut-off, and have been for a number of years. And they are also the best ones. They're the ones in the pure virgin bush, and they're the ones with a pure running stream, river, right at the doorstep. This is an asset that is just too great to ignore and leave to grow over.
One last question, because I think it's pertinent to that answer. Do you think by opening up a swing bridge and the walking trail up to past the slip would open up more picnic areas and open up more parts of the river which are now inaccessible?
I don't, because I think that we know that once we get over the swing bridge, it's landlocked anyway from the property that's still privately owned. There is ample land on at Shield Flat if you wanted to put more picnic grounds in, and I think that should be a little bit more developed too.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Jackie.
Any more?
Thank you, Jackie. Dave Cox and Tony Quayle.
Hello. Excuse me.
Welcome.
I'm Dave Cox, the president of the Paraguay Tramping Club, and Tony Quayle, one of our committee members. We are the local tramping club. We have nearly 100 members, a 55-year history, and an extensive involvement in Otaki Forks. We built Paraguay Lodge in the early 1970s, and we do have a formal arrangement with DOC to maintain it. I'd like to just go through the recreational and access issues and then comment on the paper. Otaki Forks is the main gateway into the Western Tararuas. There are limited alternatives. The Mangahao Road is long and challenging. The Otaki tracks have slips on them, and the Waikawa access is effectively impassable. So Otaki Forks provides access to the iconic Southern Crossing, Southern Main Range, Warawawai Hut, and the Tararua Trail. Trampers generally, and we are, happily walking over the current slip, but the lack of the road access is effectively stopping most other users. Before the road was stopped, Otaki Forks was extensively used by families and other groups. The large dock campsite provided access for picnickers, campers, people to play in the river, short walks, and there's also the historical aspects of post-World War I settlements, the sawmilling, tram lines, and farming. So we see Otaki Forks as a major community asset for the wider community of Kapiti and much more widely the lower North Island. It's absolutely essential that there is maximum legally secured as full access as possible. So turning to the officer's paper, Paraguay Tramping Clubs fully supports the recommended option A to open the road to vehicle traffic to allow maximum access. We do note that the report has some risks in there, future slips and the state of the road under the current slip. So if option A is infeasible or technically impossible, it's critical, we think, to maintain the legal road to provide a paper road guaranteed access. Both option C, the current track over the slip, and option E, the swing bridge, would provide that foot access. Just a few points on option C though. That is effectively the de facto situation. There's very little use made of the dock track, which is hard, steep. Nearly everybody goes over the slip. We're not quite sure why that provides a health and safety liability to the council. There's far hairier tracks that people trot over in the Tararuas, the rest of the dock estate, and we're not quite sure why just a simple sign saying unstable ground, use at own risk will be sufficient. It was also interesting in the paper that the annual maintenance cost and the maintenance expertise required for option C was seen as more than option A. Surely it would take less work to maintain a walking road than a full vehicle road. We strongly oppose option B and option the option D, the foot access through the dock track, which I mentioned. They would effectively close the forks. So just to conclude, we fully support option A, but if that is not feasible, we think it's essential to maintain the legal access as a paper road, and we would strongly oppose any revocation of the road designation. We're vitally interested in the Otaki Forks area, and we would welcome the opportunity to take part in the consultation that's planned for after Council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Dave. Any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Dave and Tony. If option A wasn't feasible, wasn't a runner, would option E work for you?
It would work in providing foot access, but from our point of view, option C and option E would both provide foot access.
Yep, no, that's cool.
Any other questions? Going once, going twice, going three times? Thank you very much. Alice Carvelis? Welcome. How do you pronounce it?
Carvelis.
Carvelis.
That's great.
You're welcome. Just start when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm an Otaki Beach resident and ratepayer, and I can say that I became such and came to the Otaki region because of the Otaki River, and in particular the two sections of the Otaki River that are now very much inaccessible, except for the younger, fitter, more hardcore, and Deborah of us, and the fully abled of us. I speak for myself, but as part of in my experience as various roles as president of the Victoria University Canoe Club, club captain of the Hutt Valley Canoe Club, a committee member of the Otaki Canoe Club over more than 30 years. The first river I paddled ever was the Otaki River. I see the Otaki River as a very critical part of the Otaki community in many ways, as well as those kayaking roles that I've had. I've also been involved as a kayak instructor for several of the schools in the region. So the Otaki College, the two schools in Levin, the Manawatu College and Horowhenua College. And so I've over the years, I've personally led, seconded, organised, instructed on, and participated in literally hundreds of trips, probably several hundred, and participants would have numbered in the thousands, although many repeats in there. But you might say, well, kayaking and even pack rafting are minority sports, but I see it as a community, and all community can give value to the people that are involved. So, I mean, I've seen young people who were fractious, naughty, rebellious, perhaps, and I've seen how the kayaking instruction changed them and developed them and helped them. And it's not just a sport, it's a community. So, for example, I have a message here from a wonderful man named John King, who I first met on the Otaki River. He is one of the most skillful kayakers I've had the privilege of kayaking with, easily a grade 4-5 kayaker. That was 25 years ago. John is now a powered wheelchair user, and as part of the community, we've kept in touch with him. And John says, I'm an Otaki resident and ratepayer. Again, I think he is because of the river. And I'm a powered wheelchair user, and I really miss access to that area to enjoy the area. So I don't speak of anyone apart from John, but I would like to draw the council's attention to the fact that for differently abled people, option A is really the only viable option. Yes, the swing bridges, in theory, you could get a powered wheelchair across, but there are also fords on the river, and the battery on a powered wheelchair might not necessarily last all the way up and all the way back. It's not really feasible. So from that point of view, option A is the standout and only option for the elderly, mobility challenged people. I would also like to speak to the uniqueness. I think Cam, you touched on it earlier with Deb. So there's two sections of the river. So the section that was predominantly paddled by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Victoria University students who will know Otaki because of that river, was the section from the Forks down to just after the Blue Slip. That was the absolute standard section, and I know that all of the clubs Deborah mentioned, the Ruahine Club and the Victoria Club and the Victoria University Club and the Hutt Valley Canoe Club and even the Kupe Canoe Club, will all be sadly missing that and have told me, sadly missing that particular run because it's unique in the area for the kind of paddling it offers to develop those school children that we trained up to a certain level. And then they were just all so keen to get up to what we call the, the top section or the forks section. They were so enthused about it, and rightly so. I'm enthused about it. I really, really miss it. It's just a wonderful stretch of water, but was accessible and achievable, and because it's relatively close to Wellington and relatively accessible. Yeah, it's I don't know what the time is. It was just supremely beneficial to the kayaking community to have that as a development through from being an easy grade 2 water paddler through to being something more, which is where the real challenge comes in and where the young people's development, personal development and community development even comes in when they really challenge themselves. Okay.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you. We're kind of run out of time now, but thank you so much for your presentation. Your passion for paddling is paramount and quite obvious. So do I have any questions? There don't appear to be any. Thank you so much for presenting today, Alice. Really appreciate it. Really important to have that perspective. So I'll just double check, is there anybody in the public gallery who is wanting to present today who we haven't got to? Yes, come to the table.
Hi, my name is Mark Maynard. I live building a house currently, I'm probably the resident who's closest to the slip on the accessible side at Shields Flat. My background is in engineering. I've done earthquake design for New Zealand Electricity when they were called New Zealand Electricity many years ago, so I have some sense of that. I'm no expert in civil. Having walked that track over the slip, I guess the bit that I want to say and share with you is it's quite easy to get paralysed with risk, and we've got to get it right, and we can't make mistakes. We've got to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And I think we've sort of heard today that there's a lot more risks further down the road for people who go into that kind of area. And we can kind of get fixated on trying to avoid those risks. And we don't want to hurt anybody. We want to make sure everything's safe. But in reality, that walking slip over the existing slip, as far as I understand, nobody's got hurt. No rocks have fallen on people. I know there's some instability, and there's definitely people who know a hell of a lot more about the stability of that land. But my encouragement is to support my neighbours, David and Kathleen, for access to their house, to support what we've heard today, that access to that nature and what that does for us is truly unique in the area. I am a nature photographer and filmmaker. My work goes into hospitals and access to people who are in recovery, dealing with cancer, etc., because they can't get to those places, and that the power of that nature helps people heal and stay sane. I feel like the value of that nature connection, especially into the deeper forks, is really important. So really all I'm saying today is there is a possibility to, in fact, start excavating that slip, and it seems to me, from what I understand, that it's the end of the road, which we don't understand whether it's still there, because the road is still there under the slip at the middle section, and it's only towards the end, if I understand it, and I haven't read the detail, that there is a fear that there's going to be high cost to stabilise the end section. And I guess I encourage you to suggest that we move forward with that, and should it get really sticky, then maybe there's another solution to avoid those extra costs. The previous slip was cleared for $600 plus $1,000. I'm a bit shocked to see that it now costs $7.5 million. I realise that there's a subsidence and there's a slip from the top. And yes, that was 2016. But will it really cost that much? I haven't looked at the detail. I haven't been privy to see it. I think this thing might be a lot simpler than we think. And I encourage you to be of a more positive frame of mind so that this situation can be resolved.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. Sorry, what's your name?
Mark
Mark.
Minard, yeah.
Mark Miner.
So I live beside the stone walls.
Brilliant. Just you
Well,
weren't on our
shortly
list.
once I finish my house.
Any questions for Mark? Councillor Cooper.
It's just the same question from Jocelyn, actually. Do you think we should open that road at any cost? That it should be opened and it's just, that's what it should be? Or what's your feeling?
I think there's a limit to how much people can afford to pay. I'm struggling with the fact that the rates are going up as much as they are. But at the same time, we spend a huge amount of money on other things. And I feel like I still struggle to believe that these costs could blow out to that amount. I think in reality, we're seeing the situation at its worst, and I still can't understand how it gets to $7.5 million. And the relative cost to the council isn't, because the Roads Board will start paying, if I understand, 71% from a certain figure. So the council isn't wearing a huge amount of that cost. So.
Thank you. Cam Butler.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike, just for clarity, some of that $7.5 million actually includes property purchases.
Just
and the like.
questions only, please, Mr. Butler.
So just a point of clarity for Mark, because he said he didn't understand the $7.5 million. So some of that is property purchases and the like. So it's not just works as such. Does that make sense?
Well, if you're opening the road, then you're not buying any property. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions? Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. So that brings us to the end of public speaking time. So we move on to item 8, members' business. Any leaves of absence which haven't been communicated? Matters of an urgent nature. So we move on to item 9, Mayor's report. I did have a list of what I've been up to, nearly completed, but but didn't quite make it on for today, so we'll have to share that later. I have been busy. So I have brought another item to the table today under the Mayor's report, and that is a letter that we've received from MP for Mana, Barbara Edmonds, asking for our support to keep Kenepuru Accident and Medical Clinic after hours open. So everybody has a copy of that letter in the agenda. And so I have a motion relating to that. First of all, any questions? Councillor Cooper?
It's not a question. I'll just declare a conflict and abstain from any comment and voting.
Great. Okay. We'll note that. And I have emailed through this motion. Sorry, misspelling there. Well spotted.
Just a question.
The perils of multitasking. Yes, Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, just a question, Madam Chair. That's a statement with regards to our position. Is that going to be followed by something written to support the letter or the kaupapa that Barbara Edmonds is wanting to put forward?
Okay, yeah, I think we'll capture that. So could we add to the end of that sentence, and the Mayor will write a letter to that effect?
Thank you.
Councillor Hanford, did you have something to contribute? Oh, Councillor Wilson first.
Are you looking for someone to second that?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to move it, and Councillor Wilson. So we'll do that now. I moved it. Councillor Wilson seconded, but I'll still allow some questions if anybody still has any. Councillor Hanford, is there something going on over there? There's some activity. I can see activity happening. So Councillor Hanford, could we have her microphone on, please? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. I was just getting some clarification. It was mentioned that maybe there was also needing to be reference to the pharmacy as well. Off the back of, I think, the Social Sustainability Subcommittee meeting this morning. Yeah. That's just been communicated to me, so I thought I would voice it.
Is
But
the
Martin could
so
maybe provide
do you have
clarification.
some information there? Is there a danger that the pharmacy is going to close?
Yeah,
Okay, so let's add and pharmacy after centre.
but Martin might be able to clarify that.
Yeah,
but
Councillor Halliday, would you like to make a comment around that?
Yeah, sorry, thank you for bringing that up, Sophie. We, at our meeting this morning, there was a recommendation that came through from CAG in relation to this, which picked up the medical centre. If I could just ask, when you're considering the letter that you do, that you perhaps refer to that with regards to a bit of guidance on the wording as well.
I'll liaise with
You
them
okay with
about
that,
that.
Sophie?
Yep.
Yep, I think that captures what we need to do. Write a letter of support to that effect. Maybe the mayor will write a letter of support to that effect, but just incorporate that in there as well, because it mentions the pharmacy and it just mentions a couple of other things. But
Yeah, I'll liaise with Sandra around that and make sure that it's all.
yep, we should have it as from an officer's perspective as well. No issue there at all. And look, while I was going to comment in general around as well. Should I do that now or?
No, I just clarifying one thing. This is an elected member decision and an elected member piece of communication. It won't be from officers or anything like that.
No. Officers have a copy of the resolution, the recommendation that we did this morning. And if you could just reference that, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, great, cool.
That's the reference I was making.
Yeah. So if there are no further questions, any more questions? So I'll just introduce this. This was received in April, and it's as a result of the communication that the Kenepuru Accident and Medical Clinic after hours isn't viable for various reasons, mostly to do with lack of staff. To me, it's a really important facility, that hospital, and starting to close down services is a bit like the thin end of the wedge. We want that hospital to grow, not shrink. It's so much more accessible for us than Wellington Hospital, being right at the end of Transmission Gully, and also accessible by rail. And we heard at the Social Sustainability Committee meeting this morning that there's also now a shuttle that operates from Porirua Station up to the hospital, which people can use. So to me, it's really important that the after hours centre remains open, but also to send a message about the importance of every service at that hospital. I myself have used the after hours service on a number of occasions, and it would have been far harder to get the care that we needed by going into Wellington. So fully support this, and I ask for the rest of the councillors at the table to support it as well. Does anybody else want to say anything? Councillor Halliday.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Certainly supporting your views there, just adding to them as well. I think we have 500 people in the last year that used the facility, but 7,500 people were taken through to A&E by our ambulance service up here. And I guess what I wanted to highlight is the flow-on effect of a closure like this. A substantial amount of people in Porirua use it, but these people will then be going straight to the ED department in Wellington. And of course, that's a department we know is already under a lot of stress at the moment. So as was talked to this morning, there's a web here, if you like, with regards to cross-purpose. And you start pulling that apart and it just starts stacking more problems elsewhere. So I also wanted to voice Ngāti Toa's views on this and offer the support to their views to fully support this as well. And to the point, I think Helmut even said, well, if we've got to put our own doctors in there, we will. But saying that it's just a staffing issue, I think is very short-sighted. The importance of this as part of the network of our wellbeing and healthcare, I think, is very, very significant. Barring the fact that it's just a very good situation of supporting our neighbours and what they need for their wellbeing as well. So certainly we'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I just agree with most of what Martin's just said about the numbers. And of course, if Wellington was to fall over, Kenepuru becomes really important. Some of the viability reasons for closing are dubious at best, and and I do get the bit about the staff. That's true. There is a shortage of staff. However, if that gets resolved, and at some stage it has to get resolved somewhere, right? But close usually means closed, and very seldom do these things get reopened again. So closure is normally final. Completely support Helmut Modlick's statement from Ngāti Toa. They see this as vital, obviously for Porirua, but also up here as well. So we're all in this waka together, as it were. The only thing is and I completely support this. MP Edmonds has got a petition going as well, so I'm not quite sure if we're being a party to a petition as such, or if this is more of a political endorsement of a stance. So that's kind of a question, I guess.
It's a political endorsement.
Yeah.
Any elected members are free to sign the petition if they so wish. Great. So I'm not seeing any more lights on. It's been moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilson. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. So we now move to the 10.1, which is the Blue Bluff slip decision. Welcome, Dave. I believe so Dave Hardy's going to be presenting this report? Yep. Oh, with Martin. Mark Martin, sorry. Technical support. I'm just waiting for a microphone. It's all right, Anna can share my one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have one brief update on the paper, and that is with regards to the Waka Kotahi funding. So since the paper was, the agenda was issued, Waka Kotahi have advised Council of an intention to consult on changes to the funding assistant rates, or FAR as we call it, which would become effective from the 1st of July 2025. So not this coming financial year, but the following financial year. So this would potentially, because they are consulting on it, affect our funding assistance we'd received, especially with regards to the Emergency Works Fund, which makes up 20% of the funding we would receive. Currently it's 71%, and they're consulting on reducing that rate down to 10%. So from the 20% to 10%. So we would get 61% instead of 71%. So that would have it, when we look at option A, that would have an effect of 600,000 extra cost to council, but that same effect would apply to all of the options. The good news is that that does not come in effect until the 1st of July 2025. So hopefully, if we get a decision today, we can minimise the impact of that.
No pressure.
And
can I have a quick...
Looks like I need to write another letter.
Can I just ask a question in relation to that?
Yeah, sure.
So Dave, just on that, so if before a project starts, you get a funding obligation from the various parties. So if the project started before July 2025, and you've got a heads of agreement from the parties, one of which would be NZTA, that they will be funding at the current rate of 71%. Are you suggesting that after that they would start ratcheting that down? Or are they not obligated to what they signed up to? Because otherwise other parties possibly wouldn't sign up if they thought it was going to be shifting through the contract. Do you know what I mean?
it is unclear, but our expectation is what we would spend between now and July 25 would be at the 71, and after that would be at the 61. That's our expectation. Hopefully we're all done and dusted by then.
Well, hopefully done, but hopefully not dusted.
Yeah.
Wasn't a very good one.
Otherwise, I'll take the paper as read and take any questions if you...
Yeah, just before I move to questions, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant amount of work that's gone into this paper, and also the extra time that was taken pushing out the paper so that we could do extra work has really helped. So thanks to you and Sean and the team.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, did you have a question?
I had a question directly relating to that, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So, moving forward, if there are more slips along the way, moving into the future, that funding model from central government, bearing in mind that central government's pretty much broke, that may change even more to less percentage. There's no guarantees that it will even say it that, is there? I know you haven't got a crystal ball. I am crystal ball. It's crystal ball game, but
yeah, I think that it is unknown, but I think we could still expect to get funding from central government. We are talking about the emergency funding part, but Mark might like to add.
I'll add to that. In the consulting package they put out, I've only received it last week. They talk about the reason for doing it, and that is to give confidence that the national fund will be able to be sustainable into the future. At the moment, the money is tight.
Yeah.
By reducing it, their pressure, they'll have confidence they'll be able to hold it at that level into the future.
thank you.
Great. Councillor Coфord.
Oh, Madam Chair, just to move things along, can I move that the recommendations are accepted as they stand?
So you're moving recommendations A through D on page 8.
On page 8.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Warren?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, didn't see your hand there, Liz. So we have a mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Coфord, seconded by Councillor Warwick, and we'll now take Councillor Coe's question.
Thank you. Look, I just wondered if any consideration has been given to a user pays concept in relation to Otaki Forks, because we're looking at quite considerable cost over the long term, because these slips are going to keep on occurring. We know that, and maybe with greater frequency. So we're looking at costs, if you amortise the repair cost over, the life expectancy, every 10 years or so, we're going to be doing the same thing again, maybe even more frequently. It's a significant cost. Is there any way in which we can have some kind of a toll system operating or whatever, so that there is a user pays aspect to this? Not necessarily full cost recovery, but so that the burden of the cost is not borne by the whole community. Thank you.
Well, have we considered, the question is, have we considered a user pays model? I don't know what that looks like.
The short answer is no.
Okay. No.
Is it worth, is it possible to consider that as part of the project ongoing? Is there a reason why it was not considered, or is it just not being thought of to look at?
Under the law of a road, it's the obligation of the road controlling authority to provide unfettered access. So to put that's a key part of our rationale. So to put a toll system on it is possible, but no, we have not proceeded with that element of it.
As I understand it,
There are a number of
right, okay.
sorry, there are a number of toll roads around New Zealand that operate, automatically as you drive past. You get
So I think the question's been asked and answered.
Yep.
We're not going to debate
Right.
the merits or otherwise
Okay.
of toll roads
All right.
right now.
all right. Thank you.
So I'm going to move to a right of introduction soon, but I just want to finish off questions first. So is yours a question, Councillor Coford?
No, it was just a comment.
Okay, so you can include that in your right of introduction. Councillor Pravanov, a question? Yep.
Thank you, through the chair. In relation to the recommendations and base what we've heard from council staff, that A would be proceeding probably toot sweet as soon as possible. B, agree to undertake further detailed investigations. There's no time frame on that. I think it's important to have a time frame in there.
Yeah, well, I guess both options we would begin looking at on approval of the recommendations.
Okay, well, that's good to hear because, just so that we understand what the time frame is for both of them. Thank you.
Just on the understanding that option E, if that was the decision, then that would be a long-term solution. We wouldn't be coming back straight away on that. There's quite a bit of work to go under the bridge, so to speak.
Nice one. Councillor Pravanov's microphone, please. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So what you're saying is that if B was agreed to, potentially in combination with A, that wouldn't start straight away. That would happen sometime down the track.
We would start the investigations immediately.
Okay.
But it is looking at a long-term option, and that is, there is a process to go through for that, which potentially does involve taking or acquiring property through the PWA.
Okay. Right. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday, a question?
Yes. I just want to get some clarity with regards to, you noted a contractor's view was this, it's relatively simple, all things considered. If option A, we go forward with that, when is likely start date? I won't hold you to any dates, but I'm picking it's going to be sooner rather than later, especially with the news just coming in from central government. So obviously you want to get the work underway, but is this something that's could be progressed quite quickly?
Look, we'd need to go out and procure an engineer and procure a contractor. We've got an idea of how we may go about that through an ECI type model. We would also need to apply for resource consents, but we would be our aim would be to have the design completed during this winter and hopefully get into doing the work during the summer, but we would have to, obviously, that would be reliant on resource consents being issued. That would be the biggest hold up, I believe.
Okay. No, that's it for me, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Under option A on point 14, it's where nobody can predict things, which obviously you can't, but based on the evidence, we could expect a return period of 10 years for similar events into the future. So is that suggesting that what is there now, if you fixed it, that in 10 years you would expect it to be where it is now again? Is that what that's suggesting?
What we are saying is that for the areas outside of the repairs, we would expect potentially there could
Same
be failure. I think if I just go back to one of the briefings where we explain the scarp of the Blue Bluff beyond the wider area, so we're talking that wider area, but we would hope the repairs would last.
Okay, and considering the option A, it sounds like the others aren't runners. Well, certainly the public don't want the others. The Tarzan option, are they the swing bridge? Sorry, are those options mutually exclusive? Do you think option A, and if they are mutually exclusive, is that based purely and simply on money, on the cost?
Well, I mean, if we open the road, there is no need for the swing bridges.
Except in 10 years' time, you might need it again.
Which is why we suggested let's look at a future-proof plan down the track. The option B would be to have it ready to go, not to get to the point where it's designed and we have a design and potentially a consent and a wildlife permit.
we would cross that bridge when we came to it.
We would indeed.
Keep us in suspension.
But prepare in the meantime.
And just my one more question is, we'd heard from that the Waiapehu Tramping Club and Parawai Tramping Club are able to use the facility now, or they are able to get through now. There's no, and I mean, the risks takers when you do that, right? Obviously, but that's all cool. And so if work started on option A, would the tramping clubs, would they still be able to get access, or would we be able to arrange something so that they could?
Just to clarify, from a council standpoint, the road there is closed and the track is only a track for the use of council staff to go and assess the conditions of the slip and to get access to the monitors we've got in place there. So we encourage people to use the dock track, but we can't make them. So once work start, that will be closed, and we will be. It'll have to be closed because there will be diggers and it will be dangerous.
Right. So presumably would engage in dialogue with those people who are frequent users about what other options might be available to them?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Councillor Hanford.
Just one brief question. Under mana whenua in the report, point 7.2, we've got noted that the Otaki Forks and Tararoa ranges are considered as taonga. I'm just wondering if there has been specific engagement with Ngā Hapu or Otaki and what their perspective is on the options.
We reached out, but we haven't had anything back. Officially.
Oh, okay. Councillor Kirby.
I guess I have a following question from the answer to Councillor Wilson's question, which is related to, while we're working, that access will be closed. So we heard from the residents that are beyond there, the Campbells. Is there a plan and a budget for how we're supporting them to access their home while that current walking access that they use, that they're not meant to use, but it is their really only option, that we're supporting them?
We have an idea. We haven't discussed it in full with them, but they were there during 2016, I understand, and managed. But we would work with them definitely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go now to Councillor Coford's right of introduction.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I think our speakers at the Public Gallery have said it all today. And a great thanks to the staff. This has been hard yakka for 2 years now, and the report is absolutely second to none. Thank you very much. And Dave and Tony for building the Paraguay hut. I didn't realise your tramping club did that. It's a wonderful asset. And I see the field hut has had a fresh lick of paint for their centennial, and the Kime hut's been tidied up as well. It's looking good in there. This is a great community asset. It's the Te Araroa National Walkway connection. It has the access, of course, to the Tararoas, the Southern Crossing, and it's a family place. Once you go through the Totra Tunnel there, the cell phones die, and it's just a wonderful paradise for for family time. So I just have absolutely no qualms in recommending that this goes ahead and as soon as possible. And thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor Cockford. Councillor Warwick.
Yeah, I just want to thank the speakers as well. This is very important to people in Otaki, but the wider region as well, north and south. Many schools go up to the gorge when they can, and they still do across the slip to do outdoor education. It's not just from Otaki, it's from Kapiti, from Horowhenua, from Palmerston North, Wellington. And I think the money that we spend is quite minimal in comparison to what we spend on other roads around the district. Many millions are spent on many roads that don't have the same kind of social impact that this road does. So we aren't considering the social and economic impact of access to the Otaki Gorge in any of the reports really, and that's actually quite huge. Access to the Tararuas is not just for our enjoyment, it's also for search and rescue. And when it's bad weather, as usually when people go missing and they can't fly helicopters in there, so it's really important we can get our search and rescue into there. But I'd really also like to acknowledge the Campbells, who have been incredibly patient and very kind throughout this process, to everyone who has gone into the gorge over the slip. They've turned a really negative situation that they've been in into a really positive situation. They've helped many people. They have water outside their house. They've done a lot of data gathering of people who have come and gone. And I know that Kathleen, when we met a couple of weeks ago, said that she'd really enjoyed the time meeting people and getting to engage with them more. So yeah, I take my hat off to you. You've been amazing, really, what you've done in this situation. Yeah, so I would really hope that we do vote to keep access and look forward to the future of looking at the other options. You know, in the future, at the moment, we don't have any of those options, but there are other options, the Golden Gate Bridges being one. But there are other options in the future. We just got to be prepared. And just reminding that in 100 years, I think this road was opened about 1820. It's about 100 years. There have actually only been 7 slips. So that's actually not every year. And yeah. So yeah, I would really hope we're all supportive of this. And thank you to the staff. You have done an amazing job. And you've been really open to meeting with the community and people who have worked and lived up there to look at options, and I'm pretty sure you'll be open to that in the future. So thanks.
Thank you.
Cam Butler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. Just like to, Shelley said it really well, in that the staff have done an amazing job. They've been out meeting constantly with us, with the public, with the Campbells, and have done a fantastic job. The Campbells have just been so tolerant. I couldn't have lived on the other side of a slip for 2 years, including coming to meetings with us and having to go back over that slip in the dead of night, dark as anything, and and they're doing it happily. Well, perhaps not happily, but they are doing it. I'd also like to acknowledge the work that Shelley, Councillor Warwick, has put in, and Jackie Elliott from the Community Board. There has been quite an effort here to actually educate the public, talk to staff, deal with the Campbells, and actually put forward what the community wants in this. And if you think about it, how many people, when they do their pepeha in the Kapiti area, say that the Tararuas is their maunga? Okay, you might be easier to say who doesn't. That might be an easy way to count it, because of the fact that those Tararuas are the maunga from all the people here. Access to that area is paramount. I'll admit my bias. I'm a kayaker. Okay, I'm a very reluctant tramper. I have a very keen wife who's a tramper. And that access there was, when I lived in Palmerston North in the 90s, was something that we used constantly. Okay? As Deborah and Alice and others have said, the parts of the rivers that are missing to those people wanting that style of adventure are now not able to be accessed. I can comment there's no way that I'd want to pack a 22 kilo kayak in for 3 kilometres. I'd be absolutely buggered and then wouldn't want to do the river. But if you think about it, that connection there with a road connection allows families with disabilities, mobility impairment, young children, reluctant teenagers to access the forks for leisure, to be there with the river, to get to the nearby hut, which is a beautiful short walk in to get people into tramping. It also allows things like the Southern Traverse race to come over from the upper hut side of things over to the Otaki Forks. That can't happen because they don't have the access to the Otaki Forks domain. As Jackie Elliott said, 85% of the campground in the area is now cut off, and potentially one of the best campgrounds. That, you know, in terms of the cost to relocate that to Shield Flat, starts looking, you know, that cost to open the road starts looking to be quite attractive. People go there for adventure by themselves, you know, to be with nature, maybe to get away from their family. You know, they go there with friends, they go there with family, they go there with tramping clubs, kayaking clubs, school trips. Okay, the access to that area is paramount, and it is a taonga for the area. So I've really, from the Otaki community's point of view, I very strongly urge the councillors to vote for and support of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. I won't repeat what others have said, but I'll perhaps take a slightly different approach. But I guess we're in the have that interesting way up of what is very an option that's very strongly supported by council. That we've got to weigh up against a pragmatic approach to cost, etc. And I remember when this first happened. You know, the first thing I must say entered my head is we'll be buying the properties that are up there and more than likely keeping the roads shut. What's been and we've had a lot of changes since we've opened an expressway. The place has opened up a lot more. I certainly see a lot of benefit with regards to having access to that space. And what I found a bit more reassuring from my end with regards to the decision I'm going to make today was a comment number 8 around the earth moving company, because it's just giving me a bit more, I suppose, confidence that this isn't, you know, we're way up in the scars with regards to how this is going to work, and it's not going to collapse halfway through or something like that at all. We've had the experts say that this should be relatively straightforward, and certainly from a safety perspective, which is obviously a very high concern. The big other thing for me as well is there's a substantial cost to this, but at the end of the day, the cost to us as a council is fundamentally about the same whether we open it or close it. So from that perspective, it's, you know, weigh that up against what our community wants us to see in this space as well. The tourism and the economic development potential I see growing from what it currently is, but also the well-being aspect that's being talked to as well. I'll certainly be supporting Rob's motion today with regards to things, and look forward to perhaps, and I do note the gentleman saying is quite shocked at the price. I know it's the sort of things we have to deal with in council, but I'm hoping that the comments we receive from this company might mean that we can make some savings somewhere there as well, which I'm sure will be very much appreciated, but we won't know what we don't know until we get moving on this project. And I certainly love to see it now that you guys hope to get a green light after the decision today, that we can get onto this and actually focus on getting a great outcome for our community. Thank you.
Glenn Olsen.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I just want to cover a couple points, well, re-emphasize a few points which have been said also by the public speakers. So I was really happy, you know, that some of these were brought up today. But this is a unique area. There's nowhere else, you know, on the coast which is like that. And it's really important that it stays open and is accessible. And accessible should be to everyone. Those who have, you know, who are disabled, who are not able-bodied, the elderly who can't walk into there. Because as a child, we used to go there as a family and have a picnic. We would drive there, would get out, the whole family could come together. At the moment, you can't do that, you know, and there's very little places like that on the coast where we can do that. So I think, remember, it's not just about the able-bodied, the people who can walk there, because they can get there anyway. And it's about those people who can't get there, and they're the ones who we should be thinking about, because this is a regional asset and it should be open to everybody in Kapiti, not just a few. So that's one thing. The other thing, building on that, is and this was covered slightly, was camps. It's been a rite of passage for 50 years for every school child to be able to go there on camp. And this has been going on 50 years. After the slip happened, for at least a couple of years, the school camps stopped. They didn't go anywhere else because there is nowhere else on the coast to go. Now, the school camps are going back there. They're walking over the slip face. Now, this is health and safety for the schools. They know it, but it's the only way they can take their children, these children, to a camp and give them that rite of passage which everybody else has had in the area, because there is nowhere else. And I know this is not just the schools, it's the Cubs, the Girl Guides, all of these. And I know recently the Cubs contacted another place where we used to be able to go, which is now privately owned, and they said, can we have a camp there over a weekend? They didn't even respond to them. And this was another great place we used to go. In the end, they took the older children over and they walked over the slip face because that's the only option they had. And the last thing, just quickly, is cost. Yes, there is a cost. The cost is not huge. I mean, it sounds huge, but over the time period, it's not huge compared to other costs that people, that we're having. And think of this, people are looking at it and saying, well, what could the cost be over 20 years? Well, yes, something could happen over 20 years. It could expand, but there's no guarantees that will happen. But what I don't hear is when decisions have been made on spending on other areas, I don't also hear councillors saying, well, what is this going to cost over 20 years? I hear, well, this is what it's going to cost over the next year or 2 or 3 years. You're not saying, well, actually, over 20 years, for example, Mahara Gallery, if you fund that, it's going to cost the same as keeping this open. So really, there's a lot more people are going to be using something like the Blue Bluff Road than Mahara Gallery. But over 20 years, the cost of keeping Mahara Gallery open is probably going to cost more. So keep in perspective, Remember that there's different areas of the community using these, and you should be making as much accessible to everybody and not just picking which groups you're going to spend the money on. So thank you.
The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments for me. One, firstly, just to acknowledge, as others have, the Campbells and the cost that it has been to them personally over the last 4 years since the slip. I'm super conscious of the cost, acknowledging what Mr. Olsen just said, but also the cost, one, to reinstate the road or whatever option we choose, but also the cost of not of doing it. I think those are there. I think one of the things that would provoke me in this morning, or even the presenters today as they've spoken, have made it quite clear to me how much kayaking and canoeing is a part of Otaki's culture. Just on Tuesday afternoon, we had a representative of the Otaki Wakahoi group up there and their desires for the lake at Winstones Lake. And I also know that we have a very strong canoe polo club in Otaki. So I look at all of those things together in terms of a dream and maybe an idea that the Otaki community could look at in terms of promoting themselves as the centre of canoeing and kayaking for the Lower North Island and the tourism opportunity that presents for us in the future. So in light of that, I think opening the road becomes not so costly. It becomes an opportunity for us to increase the potential for what we already have in terms of the beautiful Otaki district and the contribution it brings to the wider Kapiti Coast. I'd also just like to again acknowledge the staff and the journey that you've taken us on over the last few years, from that first visit to the slip and you requiring us to all wear safety gear and whatnot to go and stand on some ground that looked pretty sturdy to me, but could see that there were some hazards around. So thank you for that, and I look forward to this vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, kia ora. I'll also be quite brief. Just want to say thank you to everyone who's come along and shared what the awa and the area and the nature in Otaki Forks and also just the access means. I think that's been really useful context for the conversation and the questions that have been had and been put on the table so far. And what really came through, Deborah, I love what you had to say about the connection to the taiao, to the environment and the importance of that being able to be accessed by those of all ages to really enjoy and appreciate what we have, and that's so special about our district. So just wanted to say thanks to the also the elected members from Otaki for being really strong champions and advocates around the table and making sure that we're all up to speed about the state of Blue Bluff and what the community really wants to see happen as a solution to the challenge that has been imposed by the fact that there's been this slip. So assure all of those in the public gallery that your elected members have been working really hard on your behalf to bring us all up to speed and helping to lead us to making this decision today, which I'm really happy to support. So thanks. That's all from me.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, also acknowledge Kathleen and David, and this must have been an incredibly trying time for you over several years now. It was a question actually, but I think it's called the Pauli Fanta Traversia Otakia. I had no idea this Latin conversion of Otaki, but that's what it is apparently. So there's this nationally important snail. So is there a plan to, because I didn't even know these things were there, and thank God the French visitors don't go up there. So what's the plan for these little critters anyway? If we've got this nationally important critter, then anyway, that's for another day. But perhaps the environmental people would be very interested in what we might do about that. We have this nationally important species. Anyway, leaving that aside, I want to congratulate the schools for the Sherpa training, which they're obviously taking part in. Good on them. And Otaki is increasingly sounding like Alaska without the ice, so it's fantastic tourism opportunities that it presents. But back to the other stuff, I would really like to see us locking in DOC, NZTA, any of the other parties that are going to be involved in this, locking them in as much as possible. I would want to get it down on paper from NZTA. This whole uncertainty principle doesn't fit well with me when it comes to funding. We're already talking about the potential of a $600,000 shortfall. We've just gone through an LTP process, and we know what 600 grand equals. It equals a lot of pain for somebody. So I would be wanting to lock in as best we can, so we do know actually what it is we're looking at. And the other one is the funding mechanism. So I'm obviously supporting this. It's the funding mechanism, how that gets spread, what the load is. We've gone to the public and we've said, our LTP says you're getting a 17% average rate rise this year, and then those out years it's going to be about 7.5%. So throw in another 3 million or whatever. So how does that fit? What's the smoothing process over what period of time, etc.? Or is that a conversation that's yet to be had?
Yeah, well, that's okay. Do you want some answers? Yeah.
I was just going to say, hopefully, the funding, how we're funding it's addressed in point 73. So it's a capital works program, so we'll look to reprioritise other projects or use underspends.
Sorry, I don't want to do a back and forth on that, but just the thing about that is when we reprioritise something, whatever it is that we're reprioritising, those people will come here in a group and say, how dare you? We were already a priority. Well, that's what I'm saying. If there are other possible funding mechanisms other than just chopping something, especially if it's other people will see it as essential, I just think it's something that we should have a bit more of a discussion around, that's all. But there is a mechanism.
Yeah, we're picking up that point that we need to be vigilant in terms of trying to find alternative sources of funding for this and all the major projects that we have. Potentially quite an opportunity, though, when we have a tourism opportunity there. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. I'd just like to actually agree with everything that's been said with my fellow councillors, and actually respect and understand and concur with all our speakers as well. in terms of the importance of the park. You know, I've personally been impacted by it being closed. My daughter now travels to Upper Hutt to go camping, and I think Frankie might go occasionally as well. So I would love for her to be able to rather go camping in our backyard. Having said that, I'm really torn on this. My concern is encumbering future generations of ratepayers with the cost of keeping a very unstable road open. And if we look previously, it's slipped. We've been told that it will invariably slip again along that whole tract. And if we look around the country with climate change, we bang on about it all the time. We've done emergencies and all the rest of it. We're probably likely to get more rain in that catchment, causing more instability. And so my concern is that the decisions we make now are going to have major financial impacts in the future for our ratepayers. Now, we're halfway through an LTP, which I obviously won't comment on because we're in the middle of that process, but there is a lot of concern in the public around our rates increases and our debt and our intent, a strategic intent to possibly reduce debt. When I came to council, I said that I would vote along the lines of fiscal responsibility for our ratepayers and community support. And so my tornness is it's got community support, and I suspect if you spoke to a lot of the community, they'd say open the road. But is it fiscally responsible to invest heavily, which it is, not so much in opening the road now, because they're all much, whether we do the road or a swing bridge. It's the future, you know, in 12 months, do we get a big downpour, get a big slip, and your 6 million's been kissed goodbye, and we're back to scratch. So that's my, and I hope the public and those listening can understand that torment, I guess, or that challenge, that tension. I don't necessarily think it's important to have consensus in a room. I think democracy is quite good when we have those who swim against the current and don't vote with the other herd. No one likes a sheep. Well, rams like sheep, but you like eating sheep. So in some ways, I'm swinging towards voting towards option E, and not option A. However, we're saying that clearly the one can sense the sway of the room, and yeah. So it's sort of where.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Pravanov and then Councillor Coe online.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So I certainly appreciate the work over a period of time that the council staff have done on this report, as well as all the investigations, and I certainly sympathise with the residents in this area and those people who actually use this great area. I have to say, when I was at university, I got stuck in the Kime hut for several days and had to get airlifted out with a range of people because the weather closed in. So I've certainly been up there. I certainly understand, I suppose, the need and the desire to open the road, but I also think we need a backup plan in terms of looking at alternative options which are on the table. One of the points that has been raised previously about a swing bridge or going across the other side is the Paraphanta snail. I know that when the expressway was built, particularly through Te Horo, there's a group of them in there as well, and they were managed without any issues. So it's a case of where these snails can be managed.
I can't imagine they're very hard to catch.
That's exactly right. So yes.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Coe online.
Thank you. this is a real dilemma, this one, but look, I think opening the road as per option A is still just a short-term solution because we're going to have ongoing problems with it. So to me, option A is just a short-term solution. I would like to see some effort focused on a long-term solution, but as much as anything around the funding, because I think what we have there is, if not a national asset, at least a regional asset, of which the cost of keeping it open should not be borne just by Kapiti Coast ratepayers. Obviously, there is some funding coming in from government sources, but is it enough in relation to the usage? I'm not sure if there's been any surveys done of where people come from to visit Otaki Forks. But I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people come from outside our district. So I would like to see some thought given to a long-term solution, particularly regarding funding. And I would throw in there potentially the use of some sort of toll system as a source of revenue, because that's not out of line with what happens around the rest of the country. If you drive south of Tauranga, there's a toll road down that way. There's some up the far north somewhere, I seem to remember. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility to have something in place like that, because I just think it's too great a burden to be borne by our local Kapiti ratepayers over long term. So while I would support opening it as per option A, but I think there is a wider project to look at a long-term solution, especially with regard to funding. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. I'm not seeing any more lights on. I won't. I will go to the right of reply in a moment. I think everything I wanted to say has already been said. So I'll go now to Councillor Coford for a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a right of reply. The cost, whether we open or close this facility, is the same. So let's open it. It's a community facility. It's a council requirement to have the road open or whatever, get access to it. We're doing due diligence as we clear the strip, the slip. Let's just go ahead and do it, eh? Thank you.
Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So are you wanting a division? Yep. Yep. Okay, we're calling a division. I'll go to the Chief Executive. Are you happy to do that?
Yep. I love doing these things.
It's his favourite moment of the day.
I'm going to do this a little bit differently because otherwise I'm sitting here head counting. So I'm just going to call by name. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure. So all in favour, please raise your hands.
So, Your Worship, can you just say aye for me? Otherwise I've got to look up and around.
Oh, aye.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby.
Aye.
Councillor Halliday. Councillor Hanford. Councillor Coford. Councillor Coe online.
Are you a yes or a no, Councillor Coe? I'm not seeing a vote there. Oh, she just muted again. You just muted again? Do you want to? I'll just pause.
I said I raised my hand online.
Okay, good. So you're an aye. Yep.
Thank you. Yep. Councillor Pravanov. Councillor Spires. Councillor Wilson. And against, Councillor Kuba. Thank you.
A lone ram. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll come back at 20 past. Thank you for your attendance today. If you can't hear it online or on the recording, we just had a round of applause from the public gallery. Thank you for your attendance today and for the